Okay guys, welcome to another tutorial where I'm going to go through how to edit GoPro images in Lightroom. So I've got 3 folders here with a few images in from a couple of different dives that I've done over the last few months. In this first one we're going to go through natural light photos. So first of all I'm going to find my natural light photos, these 5 photos here, and I'm going to import them into Lightroom. Simply drag them across to Lightroom and up. Okay, now we have Lightroom open. I'm going to select all the photos and import them into my developing screen. Excellent, so I'm just going to show you some basic techniques for cleaning up the photos and making them look a little bit better, a little bit more presentable, so when you upload them to social media they're a little bit more eye-catching than just the fairly bland photos that we have here. So as you can see, they're fairly blue. I haven't used any lights or anything in these photos, and I haven't used any filters either. I've just used the light that's available and gone with that. So let's start. First of all, this shot here was taken in Whitianga around 3 weeks ago, and it was just in a passageway that was right next to an island. So I seen this scene and thought this would make a great photo, but it is very low light. You can see here not much light has got in. If I zoom into the photo, you can see I've got a lot of graininess, a lot of noise in the photo because of that low light, and the GoPro isn't capable of capturing really low light photographs and having them at a nice quality. But I'm going to be able to clean this up a little bit and show you a few basic techniques to make it look a bit better. So first of all, when I look at this photo, I can see straight away that I have a little bit of highlights and lots of shadows. Let's take the shadows up and see what happens to the photo. As you can see straight away, it's destroyed the photo around the edges. You can see all of this noise. It's come out in red little dots. So that's not going to look great in the photo. So I'm going to bring them shadows back down again. If I bring them all the way down, you can already see it starting to look fairly dark and gloomy. It's quite a cool shot already. Let's play around with some highlights. If we go all the way up, we blow the photo out. If we go all the way down, we get a lot of detail in the back of the photo. So where the eye is drawn to the back of the photo, you are seeing there's a lot of stuff in the water. I don't even know what that is. It might be sand, or it might just be stirred up from the swell. I don't think it's noise in the photo, but we want at least a little bit of highlights in there. Having no highlights in it all makes it a bland photo. So let's keep in the highlights at where they were. In Lightroom, if you've been playing around with these settings and you want to go back to 0, back to center in the original photo, just double click and it'll take you back to center. Let's now play around with the whites and see what happens there. So we're overexposing, but we are putting a little bit more light into the darker areas. So if we bring it all the way down, all the way up, to see what looks better. So we want a bit of that detail really. Up around the top of the photo, you got a bit of detail around the surface. We probably want to keep that where it is. And I'm going to now play with the blacks and see what happens with these. As you can see, it wasn't as aggressive as the shadows. What happened there was, as I pulled the blacks up, it brought out a little bit of the shadows, but it was more bringing out what was in the highlights of the shadow. So if I take that down, I can get some really good contrast and detail out of that. Now what I'm going to do with this image is basically play around with the shadows, the blacks. I'm going to go into contrast and exposure in a second and see what I can get out of it without destroying the photo. So if I bring it up, and I can just see down this bottom corner here, I've got the noise that I don't want in that photo, so I want to cover that up. You see there's still a little bit, but it's not really that visible. So we've got around this area, we've got them shadows that have been brought out nicely rather than being too dark. We've brought out a few shadows. If we leave it around plus 20, yeah, plus 20 should do. And I'm going to take the blacks down a little bit to try and cover that sort of area up. Now what I can do with this is play with the contrast a little bit, and you can see what happens here. It's bringing a lot more detail into the photo. See, it's making it look really eerie now. It's actually looking like a really cool photo, just like that. It's probably going to be better. So if we bring the contrast all the way down, you can see that the shadows have come out a little bit more without destroying the photo. We've still got a bit of noise around here. We've still got noise all over this photo, but you're always going to have that because it's GoPro and it's not very good at low light. But I would prefer this photo to have a little bit of contrast and make it dark and gloomy, like we're looking through a tunnel out to the end light. Let's play with the exposure and see what this does. This is probably one of the most aggressive tools in your kit that you have, and you bring it all the way down. You can see where your highlights are, where your photo is actually burnt. So you can see the image here is burnt. This is never going to go completely dark. You can see you've got the light shining through. And if we come all the way up, you can really see now how much noise is in this photo. So let's get it back to center. For this, I think I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I'm going to keep some of these details in and then have a tweak around once more with my shadows until I'm happy with them. And maybe my whites to give it a little bit more of a pop. And I'm pretty happy with that. So now we look at the photo and you can see it's a pretty dark photo with highlights shining through, whites shining through. Looking at the color, it looks pretty good. It was a good visibility day. I think it was about 15 meters and it was fairly blue water. So that's why we've got that blue hue in the water and it's not green. And actually the visibility was quite good, so it's quite a clear photo. But if we play with the tint, you can see you can make it a little bit bluer, maybe too blue all the way this way. Bring it back to center, or you can go green and go the other way. As you can see, it starts to play around with the shadows and the highlights, and that's how it changes the color of the photo. Now, whatever you do to this photo, because it's a JPEG and because it's a GoPro photo, it is going to be somewhat distorting the photo, and it's manipulating it, so it's going to look worse as we zoom into the photo. You're never going to be able to blow this up really big and have it looking like a really nice photo. You can see the edges, almost fringing edges here that merge with the water. It's not looking that great, but when we zoom out, you can see it's not so bad. So putting this on social media or something would be absolutely fine, but blowing it right up, probably not going to be ideal for that. Now, if you play with the temperature, as you bring it down, it will go more blue. And as you bring it up, it will go towards the greens again. So what I'm going to do is, we had a pretty good color balance there. Basically, I've gone 26 up there. Let's go down a little bit. I want to keep it as fairly blue water, but not distort it too much. I'm going to go, keep it about plus 11. I like this color of water and makes it look like it looked that day when I was there. Now you can continue to play around with these all you like until you're absolutely happy with this photo. I'm going to play around a little bit with the clarity, so this is going to sharpen the photo, and our dehaze tool is a really good tool that's new to this version of Lightroom, where we can bring out a lot more detail as well. So if I bring the clarity up, you can see now we've got a lot more detail in there, but it has completely destroyed the photo. There is a lot more noise. It's basically manipulating the pixels to bring more clarity into the photo. So I'm going to go up a little bit, see what the dehaze does to this. It's not really doing that much for me on this one, so I'm going to leave it there. If we come down to our vibrance and saturation, we can make our shot black and white, or we can bring them all the way up and kind of blow it out with a saturated vibrance. If we bring them back to center, what I find the vibrance is very good for is taking a little bit of color out of the photo and making it a little bit more moody. So as you can see there, we're looking at a really quite fluorescent blue shining through, And as I pull the vibrance down, it's actually making it look, it's still blue, but it's kind of giving it a nice feel to it. So I'm going to leave it about there for this photo. Now there's a few more things we can do down here. We can play around with the colors and stuff. I'm not going to go into that today because it is basic editing. So I'm going to get rid of that one. Split toning, I'm not going into that either. Let's have a quick look at the detail. So basically this part here is the photo zoomed in. As you can see down the bottom, there's some rocks and stuff down the bottom. This tool is very good for showing off your noise in your photo and showing you how you can actually get rid of that noise or sharpen it. So let's have a look, see what the sharpening tool does here. And if you look at the pixels in the box, basically it's just manipulating the pixels. I'm going to leave it all the way down. If I bring the noise reduction up, so a lot of people think that the noise reduction will be the solving of their low light problems, but actually it's just going to blur your photo. So you can see there how much it is smoothed out everything in the photo. So some is good, but probably not too much, because if you go too much, it just looks like a filter has been put over the photo and it looks a little bit terrible. So I'll leave it with a little bit of noise reduction just to take that harsh edge off, but I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not going to play around with any more details or contrast in the noise reduction. I think this photo is pretty much done. And what you can do is, if you do have distorting and lens issues, so with a GoPro, as you would know if you have your own GoPro, it's a very wide lens. So as you can see up here, we have 3mm lens, basically meaning that pretty much all the time everything's going to be in focus, from right in front of the camera all the way to infinity is going to be in focus, and it's a very, very wide angle. It's a full fisheye lens pretty much. The f-stop is a f2 for it, which is set by the camera. Because we were in low light, the camera shot this one, had it on auto, and it shot it on 1/60th of a second, which is actually really slow for an underwater photograph. If you take an underwater shot and it's any slower than this, what can happen is you're going to have movement in the photo, like if you can't keep steady and stuff. And you can see up here the ISO was right up at almost 3000, so that's high image sensitivity. If we come to here and we can play around with these guys, we go enable profile corrections, we can select which lens, so we choose our GoPro, and you can see here it's chosen the Hero 4 Black Edition because it knows from the data of the photo. It knows. So as you can see here, it's chosen the Hero 4 Black Edition, which it knows from the data of the photo. So you can choose any type of GoPro here if it gets it wrong, but it doesn't. I've never had Lightroom get it wrong. And basically what it's done for the correction is, as you can see, it's changed it from being a fisheye. It's almost tried to flatten the image. It will also manipulate your highlights and shadows and things like that as well to try and make the photo better. So if you really want to do this quickly, you can just go down to enable profile corrections, pick your lens, pick your GoPro, and away you go. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it like this. I prefer to have the rocks a lot closer to the scene, and to have the exit of this little passageway a little bit closer rather than being further away. So I prefer this image like this. As you can see, for removing the chromatic aberrations, it's not really doing much for the GoPro. This will help more when you have lenses on DSLRs and things that you want to basically do very fine tuning of. But for this photo, it's not really going to matter. So that's pretty much it for this photo. I'm pretty happy with the basics of editing this, and it took me there probably about 5 minutes to do. Had I not been talking through it, it would have been a lot faster. But I want to show you guys how you can change your photos just to clean them up and make them look a little bit better. So what we can do is we can see the before and after scenes, and I'll do maybe a little montage at the end of this as well to show you in enlarge. Basically, I'll show you exactly how the photo looked before and how it looks after. So I can also continue to edit this in this screen with the two Y's, showing my before and after. So if I can bring my highlights down a bit maybe and see exactly how it looked before, and if it's how I wanted it to look, whether the photo does look better or whether I should have just kept it the same. Basically, as you can see with this one, I've gone a lot darker in the photo. What this has done is it's got rid of a lot of that noise that was very obvious from the start. It's made it look a little bit more eerie to what it looked like before. Before, I feel like it didn't have much contrast, it didn't jump out at us, it didn't have much highlights. As you can see now with these two, you can really see the highlights through here, whereas on this photo, it's a little bit bland. And now, this isn't the world's best photo. It was shot on a GoPro, and I just thought it would look cool at the time. I think I framed it fairly well and got a decent photo just to chuck up on Instagram or Facebook. And once I'm happy with my photo, what I can do is go back to the original, and I'm going to export it. So go to File, Export. First of all, when you first use this, you want to choose a file that you want it to go into. So I'll choose my pictures file. I go down, I can add my watermark to it if I want to or not. And I can choose what size I want it to have as well, what sort of quality. So if you were needing to upload a very small photo, you can limit the file size. You can also choose what different file type you want to export it in. I find JPEG is universal across all platforms. It's the easiest to use on most platforms when uploading. So I'm pretty happy here. Exported to there. Yep, I just click export. Tells me I already have this photo because I've already edited this before, but now I'm doing it for this tutorial. So I just chose to have a unique name, and I've exported that out to my hard drive. Let's crack on with another one. Here we've got Michael. He is cruising along in side mount, and I want to clean this photo up and make sure we've got a little bit more pop in the photo. So I'm gonna, first of all, I always love to go for the shadows first, just to see exactly what's happening in the photo and in the shadows, because they're one of the best areas to manipulate for me. And that'll be different with all photographers, is everybody loves to do this a little bit differently. And as you can see here, up and down with the shadows, I can get a decent amount of light back out of my shadows. And then from here, I'm going to play around with my highlights. Now, if I go all the way down, it's looking like a flat image. It's got no pop anymore. If I come all the way up, I've maybe blown this kind of circle out here. So I'm just going to keep it just a little bit above what it was to put a little bit more light into it. And go up with my whites because I want to have a bit more light in this. It's going to put light in the entire photo, but it is going to focus very much on highlight areas as well. Take my blacks down a bit. I want to make Michael nice and dark, whereas I've still got the details coming out of my shadows. And I can play around with my contrast as well. This is gonna give it a bit more. As you can see with the contrast, the more I do the contrast, really see the noise coming out. You can see it in these shadows. So if I bring the shadows back down, it starts to cover up a bit of the noise, but not that much. Basically, this has just come from me manipulating this photo. The more you manipulate it, the more you're going to destroy the photo, but you are going to make it look a little bit better. I don't know if you guys have noticed yet, but we've also got a classic GoPro shot where we've got some of my finger in there. So we're going to use the cropping tool here. Whenever I'm using the cropping tool, what I like to do is hold the shift key to keep the same dimensions, and I just drag it until I have it where I want it. Now, as you can see, Michael is almost over the line of the thirds, so I'm going to put him right over it. See how that looks. To me, that looks really nice. we have over on the right hand side, we've got some rocky reefs, and then we've got Michael kind of out on his own in the blue ocean. Great trim, I might add, great position in the water, so we'll leave him there like that. I don't think this needs any more light in the photo. I think we've got enough light. So the settings for this one, you can see up the top here, 800 for the ISO, 1/100th of a second, so it's a little bit faster than our previous photos. Same f-stop and the same focal length, because the GoPro can't be changed with that stuff. Not that I know of anyway. If you know of a way to change the f-stop, let me know in the comments. With this one, let's change the color. Let's see if we can alter the color and what happens. So we've got a little bit purple here, but if we bring up yellows as well. Now this image was shot down at about 25 meters, so it doesn't have that much light in it. As you know, if you're a scuba diver, you lose the reds first, and then it keeps going with all the colors, and you start to lose them all. We've still got our yellows in there, but we don't have any oranges, any reds. Basically, we're losing them colors, and the last color that you do lose is green and then blue. So that's why them colors are normally prominent in underwater photos. So I think only a little bit of color correction, maybe a little bit bluer, that'll be fine by me. I'm going to take them shadows a little bit down. There we go, to get rid of some of the noise. And I pretty much like the photo like this. Now, let's see what we can do with sharpening it up. That looks pretty good, but we are getting a lot of noise. The more we play with this photo, the more the noise comes out, dehazing it. Look at all that noise. Let's get rid of the dehaze. And I don't really want to do anything with the vibrance, so I'll leave that at 0. Now, as you can see here with our noise, let's see if we can reduce some of that and how it looks. So overall on the photo, it's reduced it a little bit. If we go too much, again, look at Michael. He's all blurred out. It doesn't look that great. It's like a very terrible photo, but if we just do a little bit, we'll get rid of some of the noise. We're not going to get rid of all of it. Again, it's a GoPro. The shot was taken down at a deep depth. This will be fine. This will be fine for posting on social media and stuff like that. If we can do a comparison before and after, as you can see, the before state and the after state of the photo, we've gone a little bit bluer in the after state. We also have a little bit darker shades on the rocky outcrops, and it just looks like a better photo. We also have more detail around the diver, which is ideal. We cropped out as well. This one isn't showing that much. We cropped that out, but we did crop out the thumb as well. This is showing an after cropped photo. So what we could do here. Okay, so that's the photo pretty much complete, and I'm ready to move on to the next one. So I'll export that one. Just click export with previous. Once you have your settings set up, you can just keep exporting them to the same place. Okay, now again on the same dive with Michael, I shot this one underneath the boat. As we were doing our safety stop, we were just hanging around, not much to do, and I could see the light shining through past the boat. So what I'm going to do is try and clean this up, and I want to make it look really, really shadowy and dark with the light shining through. So I'm going to focus on my highlights and my blacks and shadows and my whites. So have a look what happens here. Now I prefer the look of this green coming through, because the water was blue in areas and green in areas. It was like a merging visibility, which was really, really cool look. I really like the look of Michael and his shadows. As you can see down the bottom here, as we've manipulated the photo, we have got this darkness occurring at the bottom. So if I use the shadows, I can try and bring that up. But also, it is destroying the photo. So what I'll do is I'll leave that down a little bit. Bring the blacks back a bit. maybe not have them so much down, can bring them back a bit and rely a little bit more on other tools, dehaze, and I think that's looking like a pretty good photo for a GoPro. Also would look pretty cool in black and white. If I take the vibrance and saturation all the way down, I think that looks like a really stands out to me as a great photo. Again, let's do a comparison. As you can see here in the photo, the boat is very much quite bland. There's not much darkness to it. It's not showing off the light as much. The highlights are changed here. It's really blaring through now, and it's making the image pop. Also, the around Michael and the shadows, that we could never bring that all the way out. I've made that a lot darker to make it pop a lot more for the image. You can see the bubbles too, they're popping a lot more as well. Cool, so I am happy with that one. I'll go back to my main image and let's say File, Export with Previous. So as you can see now, as you start to move on with this, it gets faster and faster. Sometimes there's things you know you don't even need to do. I didn't really need to do any noise reduction then. If I had, it's gonna smooth the image too much for me. So I just left it as it is. Let's move on. Now we've got Trev also in side mount. We've got a recurring theme here of our side mount divers, which I think is pretty cool. Basically, this was taken in Fiji. Settings for this: ISO 1200, 1/120th of a second. So a fairly fast photo. This was also taken at depth, you can tell, because Trev's arms and legs look green. So he's lost all color from his skin. The only color that's actually left is the bright orange of his fins and DSMB. So what we can do here is, first of all, I'm going to rotate the photo because it looks like he's on an angle, but I know he actually wasn't on an angle. So I'm going to change this so he looks more like he's horizontal and centers him in the image as well. So now he's looking a little bit straighter in the photo. I've also got a few things that I want to get rid of from the start. I'm going to do a spot removal and I'm going to get rid of his bungees. There we go. And I'm going to get rid of these bubbles. So you just draw over them with this spot tool and that will basically take away any unwanted areas. I see I've got a tiny little bit left there. You can do this in Photoshop, but this is the quickest way to do it. Just coloring over and then nobody would even know that they were there. Also, we have a couple of bubbles up here. They're not doing any harm. I can't get rid of the bubbles around his face. That would take a lot of Photoshop, so I'm just going to crack on with the photo and see what happens to it. As you can see there, highlights on his tank. Highlights are blowing the tank out a little bit. We're never going to be able to change that, so we might as well just run with it. If we take it all the way down, it looks like his tank's are luminous on one side. Let's just go up and make it a shiny tank. That's fine. As you can see, as I'm making it darker, the background looks bluer. There was probably 25, 30 meter visibility this day, so it was already very good visibility. So it was really blue. As you can see here, with the visibility being what it was, it's a little bit easier to put color in it because the color actually made it down a little bit better, but also it's not that great. This isn't like we're playing with a raw file, so we're never going to be able to get it perfect. But what I can do is get a little bit of color. I can see a bit of the color in the corals coming out as well, and a little bit better color in his skin as well, I think as well. Hopefully we'll see that when we do the comparison. Let's make it a bit sharper. Take it down a bit and then dehaze the photo, see what happens there. Let's make it a little bit too red, I think. You can see there the profile correction has distorted the entire reef, so you can see it's a little bit distorted already because of the shape of the lens and how close I was to Trev. So we're going to just keep it like this. There we go, we've gone from being really quite green to being a lot darker and bluer. And I'm going to go with that to get a bit more detail, taking the exposure back to 0 to get a bit more detail out of the photo. I've kept it very blue. It was a very clear day, as I said before. And hopefully I brought out a little bit more detail and made it not so bland and green in the background. So I'm happy with that one. I will export and move on to my last photo. My last photo is Trev again in side mount. So for this one, I was shooting underneath him, trying to get the sun in the background so I could silhouette him against it. And as you can see, I framed the photo so that the reef isn't fringing over his body. He's fully silhouetted against the blue water and the sun being in the background. So let's try taking the highlights up. If we take the shadows up, you can see we've got damage to the image all around here. You can bring out the corals and things like this as well, but you can see significant damage to it. So I'm going to leave the shadows down a good amount so you don't see that too much. Around Trev, you can see he has lots of little fish, which looks really cool in the photo, silhouetted as well. So I can blow that image out at the top a little bit with my whites and my highlights, and a bit of contrast. Even bring the exposure down, the whole exposure of the photo, so the entire light of the photo, bring that down. As you can see, because I was shooting up towards him, we were at about 10 meters here. The ISO is low and the frames, the shutter speed was high as well. As you can see here, because I was shooting up towards the light, the ISO is low at about 400 and the shutter speed is quite high to get a crisp photo. Sharpen the photo up a little bit and I am happy with that one. We do the contrast between the two. As you can see here, it's quite brownish red here. There's no contrast on Trev's body. It doesn't look as great with less highlights in the background. This image here, this is really now making him pop out of the image, and it's making for a more pleasing image to the eye. Okay, so export that. And that concludes how to clean up these photos. Let's just quickly click through them again. So now we have some nice photos that were taken on GoPros. Didn't start out as great photos, but now look fairly professional, just a little bit more cleaned up. So let's go and make a comparison between the two. Okay guys, so thanks for watching. Let's just quickly go through the photos now and see what we got and if we think they're better photos or not. So as you can see here, this one here was the first photo we looked at of the cave. This is the original version and this is the cleaned up version. A lot more detail, maybe a lot more noise in the middle. But a lot more detail around the rocks, a way darker image, and kind of brings out a real eerie feel about the image for me. Side mount photo, beginning, how it looked to start with, and how it looks after. As you can see, the diver pops a lot more with the highlights in the background and being a little bit darker. Another side mount image before and after. The side mount diver definitely pops a lot more blacks and a lot sharpened around his entire body. Here, this one I felt was a little bit of a flat, bland image, and also the cropping has put him into a better position as well. Another side mount diver under the boat. Before, very flat, very bland image. After, we've made it pop with highlights and shadows. I think that one is awesome. Again, before, as you can see down the bottom, we've got my finger in there. It's a very flat image again. And now he's popping out the image a lot more, although there is a lot more noise in the photo. And that's pretty much it, guys. So you can see, using a GoPro with natural light, you are going to get flat, bland images, but you can sharpen them up and make them look a little bit better for posting up on social media, or you would even be able to blow these up to a decent A4 size for a photo frame or something at home. Generally, these days, people just want to put them onto social media, so having a smaller thumbnail, people probably aren't going to look at these in massive detail, very blown up, and see all the noise. They're going to look at it as a small thumbnail on their phone or on their laptop. So Lightroom is a great tool to help you clean up these GoPro images. I hope you guys learned something today, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be cleaning up photos with a filter and cleaning up photos with a video light. Catch you later, guys. Have a great day.